I guess now we're ready. Well, thanks for coming, Bora. And yeah, I have an audience which is really fortunate for myself because without audience that would be a little bit awkward to record myself.
Mhm.
So thanks for coming. Okay, let's start with project management 101. Just a disclaimer, it's going to be like no bullshit, so I'm gonna swear
Mhm.
a little bit. So if
Mhm.
that's not okay with you, please let me know because I can do both. But yeah. So I was fed up with all the corporate like language
Mhm.
about project management and how people try to sugarcoat it. So that's why
Mhm.
I decided to create like a course or like start a presentation or something, like do something. So this is basically the first step of hopefully
Mhm.
like an entire course in project management. So
Okay.
yeah, without bullshit, I think you are a project manager yourself, right?
Yeah, I am, and I work as a project manager for 3 years now.
Oh, okay, that's nice. That's nice. So I've been working for 4 years,
Mhm.
and my main project management methodology is Scrum. So I'm a Scrum Master, certified Scrum Master. But I
Mhm.
did read a lot about like other project management methodologies and frameworks. So
Mhm.
I'm just gonna like compare them and contrast them and like literally give no bullshit guideline for
Mhm.
people who just don't know what management is. So which project manager are you? Like, are you an agile or Scrum
Uh,
or
I work as a project, and it was the food e-commerce system. So I working in the development company and like
Mm.
planning the development actions or doing something like plan the project. So yeah, almost as a project. I get it.
Okay, okay, no problem. So yeah, first before we start, I wanted to read the manifesto for Agile software development because I think that's the manifesto that not only Agile project managers but all project managers have to read and understand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's related to software development, which is good for you because you are from software development. But
Yeah.
it's also applicable to other project management, spheres.
Mm-hmm.
Because basically, what it says is we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value. So basically, you can replace developing software by any other word like developing product or releasing product, whatever product you have and
Okay.
you will have the same exact result. Oh,
Yeah.
hi, Arthur.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Hey
So,
there.
yeah, from now on, guys, yeah, you can feel free to mute. I just wanted like to have a Q&A session at the end, so like it's okay for you to just watch. I would be actually thankful for that because we don't have enough time, yeah, to answer the questions along the way. I kind of packed it with a lot of content. Oh, hi, Cat. Hi, Cat. Thank you for
Hi.
coming. So yeah, you can replace like software development by any other word, by any other product, and basically have the same results. Because in every methodology, in every company, we have to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. It doesn't mean that processes and tools are not important, but just individuals and interactions, like people, are more important than processes and tools. So like rather than saying, "Oh, we have to use Jira," let's say, "Oh, we have to interact with each other. We have to actually talk." Working software over comprehensive documentation. So I know it's really like a bane of many companies that they do all the documentation, but they don't actually put out good product. So it's not only about software again. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. I think that's pretty straightforward. Like, don't negotiate contracts that much. Just focus on collaborating with customer. Don't make your contracts restrictive before you even start engaging with the customer. And responding to change over following a plan. So this is the Agile Manifesto, and even though it was developed for software development, basically 11, I think, software developers and managers gathered together and just created this manifesto. I think it's applicable to every sphere of life, just like paying attention to the things on the left rather than to the things on the right, but also paying attention to the things of the right on the right. So table of contents, we're gonna go through frameworks, briefly talking about Agile, Scrum, Waterfall, Kanban, XP, and a couple other frameworks that are really popular in the project management sphere. What to use, when, and how. Again, no bullshit, just straightforward, clear instructions. Then we're going to talk about estimation because it's like a very big problem for project management in general, like answering the question when something will be done, when will people do it, and stuff like that. Then we'll talk about real life examples, and I pulled them from one very interesting website from Russia. I think Arthur and Kat, you might know it. It's called Haber. So I pulled out some quotes from developers on Haber commenting for like different project management methodologies. I'm gonna like debunk them and like give my advice to those people, even though they cannot hear it. And then we're gonna have a Q&A session. Okay, so let's start with frameworks. Yeah, frameworks nowadays everything is a mix. So for example, like two examples that I thought of while creating this is for example in daily like daily stand up, which is originally an extreme programming methods, it's transferred to daily scrum. So literally Ken Beck, I believe, or Jeff Sutherland, like the creators of Scrum, they said that they just took like the practice of daily stand-ups, like talking to each other, talking between developers, and implemented it in Scrum. And that's one of examples when methodologies learn from each other. So it just goes to show that methodologies are not siloed; they're not completely isolated from each other. They're like becoming integrated. They're mixing with each other. And another methodology is Scrum Ban. Essentially, it's like a mixture of Scrum and Kanban. So Scrum itself, if you saw like this board on the right side, you can see it like this board Kanban. It's originally not from software development. It was developed by Toyota. So like this methodology when they just put a physical board and attach stickers to it, and it wasn't a part, and it still isn't a part of Scrum framework. So Scrum originally doesn't instruct you to have a board; it instructs you to have a backlog. And then Scrum people just decided, well, Kanban is a really nice visualizing tool, so why don't we add it to Scrum? So that's how Scrumban was born. So whenever you see someone using Kanban and saying, "Oh, this is Scrum," that's not exactly correct, and maybe you should question whether this person really knows project management. After that, so waterfall essentially is one team does one thing. So waterfall, like simply simple as that, one team does one thing, then they give it to the other team. No questions asked in between. Maybe some questions, but like if you want to go back a step, you literally have to restart the whole process. So that's why waterfall was deemed very ineffective in software development, because if you have to go back all the way down to analysis just to make something work on front end, then it's not effective. And that's why Agile was developed as this Agile manifesto, but it's actually not a framework. It's not actually a methodology. It's more like a way of thinking. So Agile is an overarching like umbrella term for people who are just like who just wanted to shift the focus from waterfallish approach to something more logical, something that makes sense. So in Agile, product is king. So not only product, but like the quality of product, everything related to product is king. So it means that you can argue back to the customer, to whoever ordered the software, to stakeholders, just because you think that the product is better off doing something rather than following the original plan. Scrum is essentially, what's the difference between Scrum and Agile? People ask me sometimes, and Scrum is Agile, but with structure. So as I mentioned again, Agile is just an umbrella thing, just like a method, just like a way of thinking, way of life. So Scrum is like Agile, but it introduces structure, actual meetings, actual like how to do things. So in original Agile, it actually gives you like just the direction, and then you decide how to do things on your own. But Scrum introduces legit like structure, that we have to have these meetings, we have to have these meetings, have to do that, have to decide that, have to have a sprint goal, have to have a product goal and stuff like that. And Kanban is not a methodology in it on its own. Like, it was not created as a methodology. It's more like a visualization tool. So you like how to visualize your work. That's about Kanban. And Kanban is about that. But after it was developed, after it was introduced to software development world from Toyota practices, then it became kind of like a thing of its own. But still, Kanban can be mixed with any other methodology, just because it's like it's a tool rather than a methodology on its own. But it's like a tool with a little bit of methodology on top of it. And XP, or basically what it stands for, is extreme programming. Its main goal is to make engineers better. So XP focuses on making your team better, making your team collaborate with each other rather than having meetings and stuff like that. It's very flexible, but what it does, it's like it introduces several steps like quality assurances and mutual like feedback and pair programming, some practices that are widely known as XP practices that facilitate this culture of people assisting each other, helping each other, and quality checking each other so that they become better. So XP is actually quite efficient. I just have to add on top of this. Lean basically is a also a way of thinking. It's not really a set methodology. That's why it's usually mixed with Six Sigma, which is an actual like management methodology, which has a lot of prescribed things that you have to, take care of and pay attention to. And so Lean is mixed with other methodologies, but on its own, Lean is also a way of thinking that states we throw away all the unnecessary stuff. So whatever thing is unnecessary, we throw it away. Like if this meeting is unnecessary, we throw it away. If some process doesn't work and takes a lot of time, we throw it away. So that's the lean way of thinking. And I wanted to address SAFE, which is say scaled agile for enterprises. I personally think you never should touch this stuff. Why? Because SAFE, I think I need to address it because SAFE is gaining popularity and people are talking about SAFE, especially like software developers who work in big corporations. They talk about SAFE all the time, and project managers talk about SAFE all the time because it's like a methodology that allows you several layers of certification. And project managers love certifications. They love to prove that they're useful. So SAFE is a bullshit methodology that basically, why is it bullshit? I'm not going to explain what it is, but inside SAFE, it aligns several agile teams to achieve a shared goal, same set by management, which is a contradiction. So when you have agile, it's a way of thinking, right? You have to focus on the stuff you produce, but a safe makes agile teams collaborate to achieve a shared goal set by management, which is like, well, if the management sets the goal, it means it's not that agile, because in agile you have to pay attention to the product, you have to pay attention to the quality, but if the management literally tells you what to do, then it's not really agile anymore. So it's a contradiction in itself. And better than using Safe, it's better to use Scaling Scrum. I'm not going to talk about Scaling Scrum. It's like a bigger topic than Scrum itself, or just overarching Waterfall, because both of those methodologies, like Scaling Scrum, which is called also Nexus, and the Waterfall, they allow you to focus on one thing. So Waterfall allows you to focus on delivering something that management tells you to deliver, and Scrum focuses on Agile. That's basically like a quick introduction of what the management methodology, like project management methodologies are, and then the nuances. So, in one sentence, in a nutshell, waterfall is let's not try funny things, okay? Then agile is like just make things work, okay? Then Scrum is just understand Scrum, okay? So what I mean by this is like Scrum, it doesn't really work if you don't understand Scrum, and that's the pitfall of many teams because they don't read, the Scrum guide, but then they expect Scrum to work, and then they expect to like already know Scrum because, well, it's logical. It's all about meetings, right? And then Kanban is get things done. Okay, so like Kanban prioritizes getting things done, like pulled from the backlog and actually through the entire board to make it done. It doesn't really allow you a lot of flexibility in terms of quality, but that's a topic for later. So extreme programming, it emphasizes just getting better, like just get better as a developer, just get better, and then everything's going to play out. And then lean is all about no bullshit and work. So everything that is bullshit, everything that we think is inefficient, just throw it away. Six Sigma, I mentioned it before, it's about analyzing everything. And then safe, well, we got a contradiction inside, but that's okay. And Waterfall, so what I meant by the right side, what I wanted to tell you is like a short description of what each methodology is in one sentence. Waterfall is actually okay for step-by-step project with minimal deviations. So if you have everything set, so for example, I used to work for a company which translates and transcribes subtitles for different series from like Netflix and other platforms. So what we had is this is already a final product. Like we have subtitles in English or Korean, and we have to translate them to another language. It doesn't really allow for a lot of flexibility. It's like just translate this stuff. So then Waterfall is actually okay for that, for doing that, but there are some pitfalls with that because you have to have a very high quality step-by-step process. Agile is a set of principles that everyone should know and follow. It's just common logic. Come on, like we don't have to argue about this. Agile is just like common sense. It's just logic. Then Scrum, it requires structure, common understanding, logic, and forget one, and you're done. So basically, if you don't have one of those things, if you don't have structure or understanding or logic, then you're done for. And then you will have internal like struggles about like what is Scrum, what are we doing, why are we doing this? Maybe we should, cancel some of the meetings. But then one of the most important things about Scrum is if you throw something away from Scrum, don't call it Scrum. It's not Scrum anymore because Scrum itself is like very prescriptive in what you have to do, and you have literally like logic behind every meeting. Then Kanban is best for manufacturing stuff as soon as possible because it introduces focus. So in Kanban, we focus on one board. Literally, like in Toyota, people used to come up to this board like in every morning, like 100 people or something, and they were looking at the board and like, okay, we have to focus on this because that's been like here for forever. So we have to focus on this, and we have to like just put it through the system, just make sure that everything goes through each step smoothly. And then extreme programming is best for improving your team and product as it facilitates quality. So because extreme programming has a lot of like pair programming and other methods, they facilitate quality, and they prioritize quality above like quality of developers, not even product, but developers above everything else. So once you have good developers, extreme programming says, well, everything's going to be good. And then lean evolves your process as it eliminates redundancy. Well, it's supposed to eliminate redundancy, but there is a pitfall which I'm going to describe in the next slide. So the problems are, the main problem of project management is people don't understand project management and don't freaking care. Like they don't understand it, and they are just expecting like everything to be just logical and like, oh well, people used to work with each other without project management, so why do we have to understand it? And that's the problem, because people start thinking like from their own side. They start like arguing, and the project managers, of course, they also have some kind of ego, which is the second main problem. Like everyone has some sort of ego, which is a problem in itself in project management, because developers think that managers have ego, managers think that developers have ego, and project manager in between just thinks that everyone has ego, but they also have ego. So that's a really big problem for project management overall. So lean suffers most from ego because lean, it eliminates redundancy, right? It eliminates really bad stuff, but it's really difficult as a manager. For example, if you introduce something, if you introduce a meeting, then you're like, you have to be told that this meeting is bullshit, and you're like, well, I don't agree with that, and you start arguing. So lean is basically its pitfall, as I mentioned in the previous slide, is that you cannot eliminate some of the stuff, but you should, just because it was introduced by manager or some kind of like senior developer or someone, and then you have to throw it away and explain why you have to throw it away. But people disagree all the time because of the ego. And then Scrum Master, for example, because of egos, they play Scrum Police. They play like, oh, you don't do this correctly because, as I mentioned, Scrum is very prescriptive, right? So it tells you literally like what to do and at what time to do, but not exactly like what time to do, but what to do. And then when people start deviating from this, they start like having additional calls or something. Scrum Master just comes in and says, well, why are you doing this? You're destroying my Scrum, you're destroying my work. Like, I've built this thing and you are now destroying it. So that's a big problem with ego too. Then people abusing, for example, expedite lanes. So expedite lanes, if you don't know what it is, in Kanban there are lanes, so like swim lanes, and some companies introduce a expedite lane just to make sure that somebody's like very important stakeholder stuff is done quicker than the rest of the stuff, which again is like ego fest. Like if you have ego, you introduce expedite lane. Basically, like whenever you go into company, you see expedite lane, which is like the faster lane, which gets prioritized over the rest. There is a lot of ego involved. Either stakeholder wants their shit done like faster than the rest, or the developers want to do some shit faster than the rest. Like something is wrong here. And then again, because of ego, people refusing to cooperate in extreme programming. That's one of the problems. Like because it introduces pair programming, right? So sometimes it's not a secret. Developers just hate to do pair programming. Developers sometimes, like because of their ego, maybe because of their shyness, they just hate collaborating with each other. Like literally, typing at the same computer. That's a problem of I think ego, because some senior developers, for example, they would not be paired with a junior developer and teach them, because they think, well, why should I do that? So that's a huge problem with project management overall. So some of the questions um I think like I try to summarize problems for each methodology in one or two questions. So waterfall, a question of what do you mean we have a problem is a huge like pitfall. So because if you have a problem in waterfall, you have to go back all the way down like to where the problem was. So for example, if you have a design problem, UI UX design problem, you have to go back all the way to UI UX design, and then after that, if there are some processes, you have to go through them once again, which is a huge problem. If you really have a small thing, you have to go back to the designer, and the designer already finished the handover. So they're like, why did you come to me? Why did you come to me? It's too late. And blah blah blah. So there are a lot of problems with that. And agile is the problem for agile is, so what exactly are we doing? So the question about agile that heard the most is, what exactly are we doing here? Because agile again is not a methodology, is a way of thinking. So whenever people say, oh, agile is this and that and that, that's the problem, because you don't know what agile is. Nobody knows what agile is. It's just a manifesto from the first slide, like this manifesto, agile manifesto. This is it about agile. Like the creators of agile didn't like bother to give any other instructions. Just okay, think about this and that's it. So for Scrum, the problem is, for example, a developer or somebody generally in Scrum saying, "No, I didn't read like Scrum guide. Yes, I'm gonna shit on it on Scrum because it's not working." So that's the problem of Scrum, that people just don't read Scrum guide, which is very essential. It's just 13 pages PDF, but people don't read it, and then they expect to know things, and that's when they call daily Scrum, for example, daily stand up, or they call backlog refinement session a grooming session, which is already outdated. And like calling things different is okay, but not understanding what they are about and then complaining about this, I think that's a shit behavior. Then Kanban, the problem for Kanban is, so what if we're working on 69 things at the same time? Like, have you got a problem with that? That's the problem of Kanban, because clearly in a very problematic Kanban board, when you have like the boards, some parts of the board are overwhelmed and people don't care about this. So that's the problem of Kanban. Like, for example, quality testing, you have something like something like one column is overwhelmed with things and people just don't care because they only care about their column of things. So for example, a developer developing things and then just sending them to testing, and testing just gets overflown, but the developer doesn't care anymore because, well, the tester has to do the stuff, right? So that's the problem of Kanban. Extreme programming has a problem of, why do I have to program with this dude? It's creepy. So I literally read some comments on the internet saying that extreme programming making people collaborate is actually its downfall, which I think is hilarious because it's the strength of extreme programming. It makes people collaborate, but then people complain about this. So that's the problem of extreme programming. Then lean, well, again, as I mentioned in ego stuff, it's this meeting was made by the boss. What do you mean cancel it? So like we cannot cancel some things just because they're too important or made by important people. That's the problem of lean. So some of the resources that you can check for understanding like those methodologies are Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time by Jeff Sutherland, Extreme Programming by Ken Beck, and Kanban Pocket Guide by those people like Dan Vacanti. So in those books, I think they are essential because they describe other methodologies too. So if you read those three books, I think you can understand most of other methodologies and how they work and how project management works in itself. So estimation, that's a big topic, and unfortunately, I don't think I can provide you like a really comprehensive guideline on how to do estimation, but it's very important because for example, I know that Arthur, you have like story points and using story points at your company, and like many companies around the world, they try to introduce some kind of estimation technique to make sure that developers and management are on the same page. Like a little spoiler for that, all estimation techniques, they fail. All estimation techniques at some point fail because estimation techniques, story points, t-shirt sizes, dog breeds, like wherever you do for estimation, it's going to introduce some kind of KPI. So like how many story points can you produce in a week, how many tasks can you complete in a week, and stuff like that. So people are going to focus on increasing their KPI, which is a very natural behavior. Like if you have something that management measures, then you want to boost your numbers. You want to increase them as much as possible, right? So for that reason, if you introduce any kind of estimation, any kind of story point technique or any other technique, pe- people are just going to inflate their numbers by saying, "Oh, I completed like 50 story points this week. Last week I completed 35, so you can expect like 80 story points completed by the end of month." Basically, what they do is during the planning poker, which is one of the four horsemen of estimation, I call them, four plus actually, because there are many more horsemen of estimation, horsemen of apocalypse. During poker planning, what you can do as a developer, you can basically inflate your story points and say, okay, something is 20. And I know that planning poker is all about, making developers talk about some things, and like collaborate to actually come to an actual estimation. So, for example, if one developer says, "Oh, this is one story point," and another developer says, "If this is five," then the consensus is that this is three. But what you can do as another like as a developer, you can basically say instead of five, you can say 13, and another person saying one. And usually, what happens during Planet Poker is people just don't care. They're like, "Let's get it done." And so once you have like one guy saying it's one story point and you saying 13 story points, you can find a bunch of way to like bullshit your way around this, saying I think this is 13 because I have to do this and this and this. And management generally doesn't know what's going on, and development team doesn't really care because they don't want to antagonize each other. And what happens is, okay, let's just agree it's five. But so essentially, instead of getting three as a consensus, you get five or eight, and then you boost your numbers. And that happens all the time because developers, like not only developers but everyone understands that, well, the more story points we complete, the better we look, right? So for project manager too, it becomes like, okay, so we completed like this many story points, I can present it to manager, and then I can be pat on my head for doing a good job for completing so many story points in this one sprint, right? So everyone's kind of like understanding what's going on and just boosting and boosting their numbers, which doesn't really reflect the real situation in the team. And then burn down charts or burn up charts and the gun charts, whatever, like story points metrics. Again, it's related to story points. This all is bullshit. This all is bullshit. Everything here is bullshit. You see bullshit here. And after that, like one of the most hilarious ways to estimate things is by using dog breeds. Some teams really seriously sit there and say, okay, this is extra large, this is like Doberman, and then this is like a Welsh Corgi, and this is like I don't know what this breed is, like Spaniel, and this is like a German Shepherd. They literally like do sit there and do this. I mean, I'm not intended to shit on them, but like you have to understand what is behind this. You are introducing some kind of methodology, some kind of estimation that can be inflated. And so you are basically shooting yourself in the leg in the long run, because by the end of your work, people will just call everything large. People will just call everything like German Shepherd, and they will just like stand on this hill and die on this hill. Like especially if developers are working one by one. So if there is no pair programming and there is no if there's like this kind of thing which is called tower of knowledge, like one developer who knows how to do things, one not only developer, like team member knowing how to do this one thing, then it becomes really difficult to persuade them that what they're doing is actually not that big. Like you tell them, okay, like what you're doing is not that big, and they tell you, well, I'm the only one doing it, so like shut the hell up. like sh- because I'm the only one doing it, I get to decide how much it takes. And that happens in a lot of companies when there is one developer which is like in-house developer or something, and not software developer company, for example, like a cosmetics company, and there is one developer inside in-house who just basically does things alone. He can do whatever he wants with that. So instead of estimation, what I suggest, not only I, like people in agile development space in Scrum, what they suggest is use something called metrics. So flow metrics, it's in a nutshell, it's a method which is better, to understand what once you read the book called When Will It Be Done by Daniel Vacanti. It's a really nice book. It gets it explains in detail what the process is, what the methodology is, and what the logic behind it is. But essentially, the steps are: the first step is get your first backlog of things, get your first like list of things you have to do. Then break them down into smallest reasonable integral units of functionality as possible. So not things like, for example, pull REST API or like code this line of code or do this, do that, but functionality like build submit button. So divide instead of dividing things into literal like technical things, technical aspects like code, you divide things into functionality. So for example, if we have this epic about, okay, we do this like a big epic about let's say some kind of functionality. I struggle to, yeah, let's say like just let's build the login page. Basically what you do is divide things into, okay, login, password, submit button, and then for example support button and the home button, or something like privacy policy button. So you divide things into functionality, not things like, okay, so we have to go to database, you have to, send this to like to backend and stuff like that. So you build them by functionality. And once you have this functionality things, then you start work for a set period of time, like 1 week or 1 month, and make sure the work is consistently broken down in legit units. So consistently, once you get the first backlog, the next backlog, like once you update it, you make sure you divide things by functionality continuously. No, don't let, if you're a project manager, don't let people, don't let developers like create, don't let product owner, anyone create tasks like too technical tasks. Always make them focus on functionality, break it down in functionality. Tell me what I as a non-development specialist have to understand here. So what for example, um just focus on delivering value rather than delivering code. And then after you make sure the work is consistently broken down in this like functionality legit units, then measure the output at the end. So once you have 1 week or 1 month or like 2 weeks, 3 month 3 weeks sprint, whatever you want to call it. Like Scrum, for example, tells you to have 1 week to 1 month sprint, but essentially in Waterfall, you can have like as big like of a timeline as 3 months or like 5 months, 6 months, whatever you want to call it. So once you have this, the smaller the better. But once you have this measured, like backlog of things that we've done, then you should measure the output at the end of it, and then repeat the same process. So you should measure it and like save it somewhere. So put it in a table, or on Jira, you can actually pull up the number of issues that you've completed in a certain period of time. And then once you repeat the process several times, you use the gathered data to build a prediction. So what does it look like on practice? By the way, these are the resources that you can check for estimation. This is Escape Velocity, a wonderful book. Then Actionable Agile Metrics by the same author, Daniel Vacanti. Essentially, if you read one of the books, like whether either when it will it be done, or Actionable Agile Metrics, you don't have to read the other one. So once you complete this method, what it looks like is this. On the left side, you have the end dates and the sprint. That's not prescriptive. Like you can basically just measure the number of things that were completed in a certain period of time or on a certain date. But it's for me, like once I started doing this, I realized that the best practice for me is to set an end date to something and then just measure how many things we created in that end date. So yeah, here I put the end dates and the sprint number. So here's like number one sprint, number two sprint, number three sprint. But essentially, it can look differently. It's just the point is measure things how like as the alone of like together with your work, as you're working, you should measure how many things you output on a certain date or in a certain sprint. And then after that, you create something like throughput. So, for example, for this date, 18th of April, we completed three things, and then two, and then four, and then three, and blah, blah, blah. And then after this, once you have enough data, you just put them into simulation, which simulates 10,000 different random results over a certain period of time. So you just put like the numbers of throughput in a certain there are templates, and I can share the templates to whoever is interested. But like essentially what it does, it takes your throughput and it adds it on top of each other. So for example, if you throughput three things and then output, so throughput is the name for output in this methodology. So once you output three things, two and four and three, then this simulation, what it does, it runs these numbers in a random order. It picks the numbers in a random order from here, randomizes them, and presents you a chart, like a bell chart, bell curve of what you output essentially. So 10,000 of those things, and you will get kind of an estimation with the percentages of probabilities that you can expect some things to be done in a certain period of time. So, for example, here what I have is the percentage is let's say all things in green are the more than 95% probability of creating of outputting this number of things in a certain period of time. So, for example, here in 6 day sprint, if I have this data, I will have 95% probability of creating of making 480 um yeah, I believe the data from here and here are different, but still 480, let's say, issues in a 6 day sprint. So once you have this, you essentially create a kind of predictable system that tells you how many things you can output, how many units of work, how many units of functionality you can output in a certain period of time. And remember, because we're measuring the functionality by functionality literally, it becomes really even. It's not like too different from each other. I know that many people argue that, well, building one thing is certainly bigger than the other thing. How do we compare them? Well, because it becomes average over this like long period of time, and because the same people do the same kind of work, you have your tailored model for your team on how to do this work. So on how much they can do in a certain period of time, because it's the same team working on the same stuff and estimating things in the same way. So it's not story points that can be inflated. That like the story point inflation is a very famous, infamous thing, but it's the same, really objective like functionality. How many pieces of functionality can you deliver? And your backlog, because it consistently contains only functionality pieces, it becomes really average and really evened out over a long period of time. So after a certain period of time, if you use this method, you will be able to predict down to single unit of functionality how many like pieces of functionality you can output in a certain period of time. So this is much better, I think, than story points, than any other method I try to use. I try to introduce story points, t-shirt sizes. I try to even introduce the dog braid sizes. Yes, I'm guilty for that. But this is one of the most efficient ways, but it requires time. So you literally have to explain to your management, if you're a project manager or if you're a developer, you have to explain to your management that we're not going to use story points. We're going to tell you how many things we can output in a certain period of time, but we need to run several sprints first to gather objective data about this. The reason why it's subjective is because you can't bullshit. You can't really bullshit about creating a button. You can't really say, "Oh, I create a button and it's much more complex," because there's no measurement for complexity. And lines of code, for example, they introduced this like lines of code KPI, and people just start to bullshit their way like 2,000 lines of codes when it could be done in like 400. Essentially, it creates a lot of additional interference in the process. But this method, it tells you, okay, this is the functionality, I will do that. That's it. No bullshit. So, real life examples of how to apply the knowledge, how to apply the project management, and how to spot if some people don't know project management, don't know what they're talking about, is this is from Habur, from the Russian website for developers and people related to IT and tech. It's translated as essentially like this second part. In all other cases, Scrum degenerated over time by doing refinement, becomes a reading of the plan rather than a discussion. Dailies, yesterday I wrote code, today I will write code, status, see in Jira. So yeah, this is like very common for development teams when they just basically every time they do daily, they just say, yesterday I did that, today I'm doing that, and tomorrow I will be doing that. Just peace off. And retrospective, doing something like basically this person described retrospective as probably the only working tool in Scrum, a good way to solve secondary problems like DevOps. And grooming, the day when the backlog in Jira is deleted and recreated based on the XLS file that the product team actually uses for planning. So there is a lot to unpack, and this is a recent comment on March 5th. So I find it really interesting because by now Scrum has existed for like 20 years, and this person still doesn't know what like he or she is talking about. First point, backlog refinement can be done by anyone capable. You don't have to like pull all of the team into backlog refinement. The goal of backlog refinement is to not discuss, just separate big items into small doable things. Like you can discuss them, of course, along the way, but the goal is to separate big items into small doable things. Like separate a huge, let's say, epic about creating a front page into doable pieces of functionality, like button, 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 button. Yeah. So the second point is daily isn't status update. Like that's a huge misunderstanding about Scrum and about anything like related to daily meetings. Daily isn't status update. It shouldn't be status update. It's not for management. Management actually in Scrum is prescribed not to be in the daily meeting. Even Scrum Master and like project manager and the product owner, which is like product manager, they're not actually prescribed to be in the daily meeting. So it's not for managers. And if your project manager like thinks that they should be in the daily, then that's a huge red flag. Like they don't need to be in the daily. Like they have better things to do. Daily is for developers and by developers. It's basically a meeting. Like if you got a problem, speak. If you don't need anything, just go. That's it. If you can resolve things along the way, like just have a daily for like 1 minute or something, like it can end in 5 minutes too. That's totally fine. If you don't have any problems, just work on things and tell everyone I don't have any problems, I'll drop out. That's it. And like yeah, you can synchronize along the way. Like it's not really prescriptive to stand for 15 minutes, like stand up meeting, stand for 15 minutes. I don't really know why people like emphasize like the stand thing in the stand up meeting. It's not really essential for you to stand like for 15 minutes. You can do it in 5. Then retrospective isn't about solving tech issues actually. It's literally, guys, we messed up here. Let's make sure we don't do it from now on by doing this and that. So essentially, retrospective is created not for resolving tech issues. It's created for people talking to each other, saying, "Okay, I don't like the way you did this to me. So next time, let's make sure you don't do this to me by doing this and this and that." Of course, it can create some kind of tension between the team, but that's why the retrospective is here, to make sure we don't have tension like as the team moving forward. So people misunderstand retrospective still by saying it's like a good way to solve secondary problems. It's not a good way. Like it's not a way to solve problems, man. Like DevOps, it's not related to tech. It's related to people working with each other and saying, okay, like let's just pair program next week or something, like because I don't really understand the code that you wrote. That's it. Like working between the people. And then what the hell is grooming? Like grooming is an old way for like an old name for backlog refinement. So essentially, this person here had both refinement session and the grooming session in one same sprint. Like you have two of the same meeting in the same sprint. Your project manager, your scrum master doesn't know what the hell they're doing. They don't know, and you don't know either because you say like you have a refinement and grooming. So I got really butthurt from this. I got really like flamed by this because I was like, so that's what people like think about Scrum. They think that they understand it and they think that it doesn't work, but they don't freaking understand Scrum. They don't freaking understand what's going on in their team. They don't understand the processes and what they serve, like what purpose they serve. So yeah, like that's one criticism of a critic of Scrum. Then for Kanban, I found this comment which talks about WIP limits, which is work in progress limits, which help focus on finishing work, blah, 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 blah. The thing is, it's a good comment, but this is the only good comment, and this is the only comment I saw on the entire like topic of Kanban on Hubber about WIP limits, which is a very essential thing in Kanban. You cannot use Kanban without WIP limits. Work in progress limits, what it does, it introduces like a limit, a hard limit of how many issues, how many things we can work on at the same time in a single, let's say like either swim lane, which is horizontal, like one team working on some things, or status. So like let's say status is testing. So WIP limit introduces like we don't test more than 5 things at the same time because we lose focus. And this is the only comment about WIP limits that I saw. And essentially, it has to be there. Like people have to know about WIP limits because otherwise, Kanban becomes just a stockpile of stickers which are stocked like in the same column, and people just don't care. So yeah, other comments focus on color stickers about Kanban. So people attribute Kanban with color stickers because it came from Toyota and they used color stickers to color code their tasks. Like, okay, this color sticker is for this task, and that one is for that one. But people still to this day, like 40 years, I believe, after Toyota created Kanban, like as a methodology, as a tool, they still focus on the color sticker thing and that management is the problem because of fear of missing out. Which, yeah, like Kanban boards shouldn't be even like, it doesn't have to be viewed by managers. It's for people. It's again for people, by the people. They are the ones attaching the stickers, if they attach the stickers, because these days Kanban like boards are all digital. And yeah, to this day people still focus on like picking out those, things about the methodology, like color stickers, and criticizing that stuff. Like it's 40 years, man. Like it's already been 40 years since the color stickers was introduced. So this is one of the examples of like criticizing methodologies without really understanding them. It's like all these methodologies are blah 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 blah, but in real life they crash out. They crash on the rocks of harsh reality, and again bringing out the fear of missing out as one of the reasons. Well, if your managers are fearing to miss out, well, I guess your managers have to be replaced. But if that's not the case, then you can't really complain about this while talking about the methodology, because the methodology itself is not guilty of your manager's fault. Like your managers are the one at fault, the ones at fault. It's not the methodology. So yeah, this is the real application of knowing project management to real life, like how we can resolve and maybe explain some things and maybe make this guy's life better by saying that you don't have to do grooming if you have a refinement session. And in the refinement session you don't have to read the plan, you have to just invite two or three like knowledgeable developers, or even just product owner himself, like him or herself, just to do things like split them down and make sure that they are split in smaller units of work. That's all you need to do. You don't have to waste your time doing that. So maybe by knowing project management, we could have helped this person, but I'm not sure if I can contact this person. Yeah, otherwise I would. So bonus points, bonus because we have time left, is my view of project management in South Korea and how it's different from project management abroad and what project management should have stood for. So, what is project management in Korea? What is a project manager in Korea? Someone who ensures everything is delivered, and if it's not, takes responsibility. Which I think is not really healthy, because project manager just does, connects a lot of people who do the work. So if one guy messes up, it's not really project manager's fault, but usually in Korea, it's project manager's fault for everything. Like if you don't deliver, if you misdeliver, then it's your problem. Yeah. Then somehow, though, which is a good point, project manager enjoys a higher position than traditional PMs abroad. So traditional project managers abroad, they are just a part of the team. They're just another teammate. They don't, overarch. They don't tell people what to do. But in Korea, sometimes project managers even directly manage people, which is cool. I'm enjoying this as a project manager. I think, yeah, it's pretty nice. But then a minus point is that a PM does a lot of groundwork and is expected to know everything everyone does. So in my previous company, one of my previous companies, like doing work on creating translations or transcriptions for Netflix series. I literally sometimes I had to do quality check, which is I had to sometimes even create subtitles myself. Like I would just go and like do these things myself, even though I am a project manager. I'm not expected like to. Traditionally, I wouldn't be expected to do this work, the groundwork, but in Korea, I am expected to know that, and I am expected to do that. Essentially, what it does to hiring process is people for IT project management, they ask you all the time, which is not only in Korea, but in Korea more so. Like outside, they ask you the same thing too. For IT, they ask you if you have programming experience and if you really understand code, if you can write it. So in Korea, what it means is we will expect you to sometimes even help writing the code or maybe reviewing the code. Abroad, it just means, well, do you really know what you're doing? But essentially, a project manager is not required. It's not necessary for a PM to know the groundwork, the nitty gritty details, like because it's a project manager. It's managing the project. It's not knowing how things are done in the project. It's like, well, it's good to know, but it's essentially if you can deliver the project on the timeline and the quality is good, then nobody should care if you really know how to code and how to do things. But in Korea, it's expected from a PM to know what everyone does. Then a PM is expected to remember every detail and deadline. Like managers just come up to you and say like, okay, during lunch, like when is going to be done, like when is the deadline for this project, and you have 10 projects and you have to remember all the dates for each of the like 10 projects, which I think is pretty difficult to do because simply like the memory is overflown the way it is. But other than that, we like PMs also have to remember every deadline, which is really, really like sometimes really, really pressing when you're working as a PM. Then you're never really asked about the methodology or how to organize work in Korea as a PM. Nobody knows it anyway. So in my interviews, never, not even once, was I asked like about what methodologies I used and why I used them. I just was asked whether I know certain methodologies. Like for example, if a company is hiring a Scrum Master, they're like, "Okay, so are you good at Scrum?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." And then no other questions asked. And in one of the recent interviews for a pretty big gaming company, I was never asked about project management as a methodology, and the guy interviewed me didn't even know about project management. So I was kind of like perplexed how this goes, how this flies, because if you're hiring a PM, you should know well, like something about PM. Like you should prepare something, at least a list of questions to ask to the PM to know like whether they know their stuff. But in Korea, that's not the case. Then yeah, I mentioned this, hired by people who know nothing about PM, and like they hire you, and that's why many PMs in Korea are just like other worker, like just another worker who just does everything that everyone does at the same time. So kind of like an assistant rather than a project manager. It's yeah, I just help everyone to do their stuff which they don't have time to do, to make sure that the project is delivered on the timeline. So yeah, that's what happens if you hire people by not knowing what they're doing. And then personally, it's still a shock. Personally, it's still a shock that Scrum, Kanban methodologies are not really well known in Korea. I've been to like through many interviews, and not even once was asked about extreme programming, which is a really, really like widely known methodology. And if you just Google or search in LinkedIn on LinkedIn for a Scrum Master or yeah, Scrum Master position, there is no Scrum Master positions in the entirety of Korea, which yeah, is still a shock because Korea is like widely known for having a lot of development teams and a lot of like software development processes, but they don't know like what Scrum is, which is yeah, it's still shocking. I don't know how to really address it. So now I left some time for questions and answers. So you got something to say too, right? Yeah, go ahead and shoot your questions if you have any questions. Yep, sure. Cat.
Um, Hi. Thank
Hi.
you so much. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. It was really interesting and useful. Thank you. But I have two questions. I want to ask about the table, what you use instead of planning. Um, and,
Sorry, which
and
table? This table?
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, please. Thank you. And I want to ask about how this thing work if people quit company too often. If
Ah,
team change his his participating, I mean,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And the second one is how it's work if, for example, from the beginning, I was a junior software developer, but after, for example, maybe 1 year, I will be middle developer, and my proficiency and my skills will change. Or, for example, some senior developer will quit the company, and it's really,
Mhm.
I think it can affect this thing. But what do you think?
Okay. So first question. That's the beauty of this method. Thank you for the questions. They're good questions, actually. Yeah, the beauty of this method is if people quit, the work doesn't change. Like you still have to make this button, and you still have to do this, and you still have to do that. So the functionality doesn't change, and people quitting doesn't affect the estimation. So maybe it affects the work, but the work still has to be done. But it does affect, for example, story point assignment, because for example, if some person quit from a front end position and they were the only front ender, let's say one of the companies had a front ender who built things on Flutter, which is not really widely known. It's really niche, and they could assign story points the way they wanted. They just said, "I'm the only one building on Flutter. This is 20 story points," and nobody could argue with them because nobody knows how much does it take, and especially because they had to build things both on iOS and Android, it becomes like double. So they enjoyed really like monopoly on story points. Like the dude just came in and said, okay, this is 80 story points, I'm not gonna complete it like in time, like it's gonna take a long time. And nobody could argue because the only front end developer working on two platforms, we should actually lick his toes, and we should not say a word against him because he's the god. And yeah, that's if that person left, the story points could drop with the next person, because if the next person comes and they're really good at Flutter and they are really like have a lot of conscience, they will say, oh, actually what used to be 80 points, I don't think it's 80, it's like 20, and then everything goes, chaos. So but if the person left and they use this methodology by splitting the functionality, they would know this is just the same functionality. The guy left, nothing changed, the same functionality has to be done. Yeah. So maybe it's a different person, but the output of the team, it actually will drop. Like, yeah, because in story points you can never tell whether something will drop or not. And the second question was it about? Can you repeat the second question, please?
Yes, but for example, if from the beginning I was a junior developer, but
Mhm.
after 1 year I will be middle developer, and
Yeah.
my my skills will grow up, and I can do stuff more quickly. And the
Mhm.
planning, I think, should be changed, but I'm not sure.
You can do stuff more quickly. Well,
Yeah.
then you will do more stuff. So, for example, if you can do stuff like 50, if you used to be 50% of your current speed, you used to output only one task in one sprint, but now you can do like a little bit more, so maybe two pieces of functionality. The beauty of it is if the functionalities are not really equal between each other, you don't really change that much. People don't expect you to do twice the work. It's like how many things you do, that's the output. And there is no responsibility on one individual, because in story points what I know is each issue is usually story points, right? And people just know how many story points each teammate does, which kind of introduced like bullying, like, oh, you just did like 10 story points this sprint, I did 40, man, like how are you doing your work? But here it's like team wise, so if you can do more work, that's wonderful, like team gets bigger, output, but it's still reasonable. It's not like twice the output that you used to have. Yeah, it's fine. So I don't see a problem here, because whether with story points or with this method, you would just become quicker and you would just do a little bit more work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for the questions. Yep, I think we have space for one more question before we close. Okay, Arthur.
I have one big question split to two.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So you said that this new methodology that you introduced, it doesn't care about technical tasks, technical depth.
Mhm.
And the question is, so sometimes like there are things like technical depth or I don't know, infrastructure work. How does it, let's say, count? For
Mhm.
example, to make a new button, you need, I don't know, to introduce a new library or to update something. So do some more additional work, but at the
Mhm.
same time, like 1 week ago, you needed to make a button which doesn't require that. But like on paper, those are two same tasks. Like how do you
Mhm.
determine which one is like one and another? And the second micro question is the project is being on different, let's say, life stages, and they also have like different struggles. Let's say in the beginning, you need to write smart architecture to not get flooded by bad code. But let's say at the end of the implementation, you also need to, like, you have a big code base, and then it becomes harder to maintain it, like, and like fit the architecture, let's say. So it also like the challenge. How do you make sure that like your estimations are the same throughout the whole project life cycle?
Okay. Unfortunately, we only have 1 minute, so I'm gonna pick out the first question. Yeah, it's up to the team to decide whether they count it as an additional task. But generally, usually it wouldn't be counted as additional task because it's the same functionality. It's like it would be counted as zero. And the beauty of it is, like, you don't count how many tasks are done by individual, you count by the team. And there is no responsibility for you to on you to be like, oh yeah, I didn't finish it last time, so I finished it this time. It's like the team responsibility. So nobody is going to point fingers, and there is no data to point finger at you for you not doing it. So there is no reason for you to create additional tasks to justify it. It's just, yeah, I completed that task, and now I'm completing it again in this sprint, and it will count as zero towards this sprint because, well, the number of tasks is objectively like unaffected by you resolving technical debt. So yeah, that's how it works. It's like, well, finish the task. That's it. And there is no responsibility for you not finishing the task because, well, you're a part of the team. If people notice that you're not doing your work, they will talk about it. Yeah. So I
Thank you.
hope it answers your question. And I will answer maybe in a separate session with you if you want. But for now, I think we're limited at 1 hour. Maybe we're about to, yeah, to be stopped. I'm not sure. So I'm just going to stop the recording here. Yeah. Thank you for coming, everyone.